The rain had been falling since dawn, soft and endless like a memory that refused to fade. The streets were quiet, only the sound of drops kissing the ground again and again as if whispering secrets to the earth. And somewhere beyond the thin veil of mist a girl walked slowly, her footsteps silent, her eyes lost in thoughts too heavy for words. She carried nothing but a small paper folded and worn, pressed close against her chest as though her heart itself lived within it. The world around her seemed to blur, colors melting into each other as though the rain had decided to wash away all shapes and leave only feeling behind. The old bridge waited ahead, stretching over a river swollen with sorrow and time. She paused at its edge and looked down into the restless water. Her reflection broke and danced upon the ripples as if the rain was trying to erase her even from her own sight. She smiled faintly, a smile that carried the weight of years and memories of laughter that once echoed through rooms now silent. She could still hear his voice, sometimes carried by the wind, soft like a promise that never fully left her. He had told her once that secrets were like seeds buried deep. They may rest for a while, but someday they find a way to bloom. And now she stood here with her own secret trembling in her hand, afraid of what might grow if she let it go. The rain had soaked her hair, her dress, her very soul, until she could no longer tell where she ended and the storm began. She closed her eyes and the world turned into sound and scent and touched, the perfume of wet soil, the chill of water running down her fingers, the distant hum of thunder that felt like a heartbeat. She remembered the day it all began, a summer afternoon, too bright, too still, when he had come into her life like a poem written by someone who never finished the last line. His eyes had carried a calm that could silence storms, his laughter had turned ordinary moments into something worth remembering, and though she never told him, her heart knew from the start that love had begun like the first drop of rain on thirsty land. Time had moved in strange ways after the days, passing like breaths, nights folding into each other, and somewhere within those hours a secret had taken root, a truth too fragile to speak yet too strong to bury. She had written it once in the letter she now held, the same letter she had never sent, for the words inside were both salvation and ruin. She had watched him leave that morning under a sky heavy with clouds. He had promised to return before the rains, but the rains came and went and he never did. The townspeople spoke in whispers of the accident near the cliffs, the overturned car, the silence that followed, but she refused to believe that endings could be so cruel, so sudden. She had waited through seasons, through years, through shadows of herself fading slowly with each dawn, until one day she realized that the world had moved on, but she had not. And so she wrote again, not for him but for herself, for the piece of her that still waited by the window, watching every raindrop fall like an unanswered prayer. And today, after all this time, she had come here to the bridge where they had once stood together to finally let the secret go. The rain fell harder, as if urging her to release what she carried within. She unfolded the paper, its ink blurred, its edges fragile like the past that never quite stayed where it belonged. Her hands trembled, the drops blended with her tears, and she could not tell one from the other as she began to read the words she had written long ago. Words on the page were fading, but she could still feel their meaning pulsing through the thin paper like a heartbeat. Each line carried a piece of her soul, each curve of ink a memory of the days that once bloomed with light. She had written about love that could not speak its name, about the warmth that turned to silence, about the promises that vanished like mist at sunrise. She had written of the night they stood beneath this very bridge, when the world had seemed to hold its breath and even the stars had leaned closer to listen. She remembered how he had told her that rain was a gift from the heavens, a reminder that everything beautiful must eventually fall, and she had laughed, believing that such beauty could never turn into pain. Now the rain washed over her again, and she wondered if perhaps the sky remembered what her heart could not. She let her fingers trace the ink-smudged words until they dissolved beneath the water drops, and the secret she had kept for so long began to dissolve with them. She whispered his name though no one could hear it, and the sound vanished into the storm. She thought of all the years she had spent waiting, her heart becoming a room with locked doors and unlit corners. She had turned her sorrow into music, into letters, into dreams that faded before dawn, and yet somehow it had all led her back here, the place where it began and where perhaps it was meant to end. She looked at the river below, dark and wild and alive. It called to her like an old friend, offering silence where the world had given her noise, offering peace where the years had given her longing. She closed her eyes and saw his face, not as it was in memory but as it might be beyond time, smiling as if forgiving her for holding on too tightly. She remembered his last words, the ones that echoed through every sleepless night. He had told her that some love stories do not end, they simply change their form, like rain turning to river, river turning to sea, and sea returning to sky, and in that endless circle nothing is truly lost. She folded the letter again carefully as though it was something holy, something fragile. Then she held it to her lips, breathing in the scent of ink and rain and heartbreak before she let it fall. Her fingers released it slowly and the wind caught it, spinning it away like a leaf into the river below. It floated for a moment, resisting the pull before surrendering to the current. She watched as it drifted farther and farther until it became nothing but a pale blur against the dark water. Her heart felt lighter and heavier all at once, as though she had given away a part of herself and found herself within the giving. The rain softened around her now like the world was exhaling after holding its breath too long. She stepped back from the bridge, her dress clinging to her knees, her hair a tangled river of black, and she felt for the first time in years the faintest whisper of freedom. The past did not vanish, it lived quietly within her like a candle in the dark, but it no longer burned her. She turned toward the path that led home, though home no longer felt like a place but rather a promise of peace she had yet to find. As she walked through the rain she saw the world differently. Every droplet on the leaves, every reflection in the puddles, every distant sound of thunder carried a strange beauty, a kind of truth that only comes when one has lost and lived. She thought about how people pass through our lives like seasons, some bringing warmth, some bringing storms, yet all leaving something behind to shape who we become. Rain began to fade into a soft mist and the sky above her slowly opened its gray eyes, letting in a dim silver light. She walked along the narrow path that curved through the fields where wildflowers bent beneath the gentle breath of the wind. Her steps were slow but steady, her heart no longer racing with memories but moving in rhythm with the quiet world around her. She felt as though every drop that touched her skin was washing away the ache of all the years she had spent waiting for something that was never meant to return. She thought of the letter now floating somewhere far away, its paper dissolving, its words mingling with the river until the secret it carried would belong to no one, and in that thought she found peace. It was no longer hers to bear, it had become part of the earth, part of the rain, part of the endless circle of things that end only to begin again. She passed by the old willow tree that had stood by the edge of the road, its branches heavy with the weight of the rain. She remembered sitting beneath it once when she was young, dreaming of places she had never seen and people she had not yet met. She smiled now at the memory, realizing that in her longing for what was lost she had forgotten how to dream. She paused there for a moment, touching the rough bark with her fingers, feeling the pulse of life beneath it, the quiet reminder that even after the hardest storms the roots still hold, the earth still breathes. She closed her eyes and let the silence sink into her bones. In the distance a small cottage waited, its windows glowing faintly with the soft warmth of evening. She had lived there alone for years, but tonight it did not feel empty. It felt alive, as if the rain had filled it with whispers and stories waiting to be told. When she reached the door she hesitated, looking back once more at the path behind her, the bridge barely visible now through the mist. She whispered goodbye, not to him but to the version of herself who had stood there for so long holding on to what could not be. And then she stepped inside. The air smelled of old books and damp wood and faint traces of lavender from the garden. She lit a candle and watched its flame flicker, its glow reflecting in her eyes like a sunrise breaking inside her chest. She sat by the window, the same window where she had waited through countless nights of thunder and silence, and she wrote again, not a letter this time but words meant for no one and everyone. She wrote about the beauty of letting go, the strength in quiet hearts, the way loss could turn into light if one dared to face it. She wrote about the secret she had left in the rain and how sometimes we must surrender our pain to the wind so it may carry it far beyond our reach. She did not notice when the candle burned low or when sleep began to gather at the edges of her thoughts. The world outside had gone still, only the sound of the river remained, whispering softly in the dark as if telling her that everything was as it should be. And when dawn came it found her asleep by the window, her hand resting on the open page where the ink had dried beneath the faint golden light. The rain had stopped but the air was still heavy with its memory. The flowers shimmered with dew and somewhere down the river a small piece of paper finally dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind only the echo of a story that had found its ending. And yet in that ending a new beginning quietly bloomed like the first light after the longest storm, and the world breathed with her as one gentle unbroken sigh of peace.